Welcome to the Higher Ed Demand Gen podcast, helping higher education marketing leaders share knowledge about learning, strategies, and tactics that are relevant today. See what you can learn today by listening to one of our episodes.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Higher Ed Demand Gen podcast hosted by Concept 3D. If you like our content, you got to make sure to please follow and subscribe to us on Spotify, Apple, and Google. My name is Shiro, and I will be your host today. And I'm really excited to talk about something that I deal with in my day-to-day. So we're going to be talking about how to get the most out of your digital marketing agency. And for the topic, I have Jess Lanning joining us today. She is the Director of Digital Strategy at Liaison. Jess, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Okay, and I do ask all my guests this as an icebreaker. Jess, please tell me what you love about higher ed.
I think I have a tale as old as time. So I feel like if anyone ever officially polled people in higher ed, that at least 75 to 80% of us like to share tour guide stories where we're like, oh yes, I remember when I was a tour guide, and that's how I started in higher ed. So I think honestly, my love for higher ed started in student experience. I had a great student experience. I've worked in higher ed since I was a tour guide in admissions. So really everything just comes back to enjoying the student experience and knowing we're contributing to something that impacts people's lives. So
got it. Thanks for sharing that. I totally missed that in our pre-call that you were once you worked at the visitor center on campus.
Everybody wants, a campus tour guide. Somebody should do that poll because I think the numbers would blow all of our minds.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yep. Okay, great. And then we also just found out we're both A-frame buddies. We're both working in the loft of an A-frame right now. So that was good. Awesome. Well, let's jump in. Can you tell us, I know you were previously a campus tour guide, but can you tell us a little bit more about your role and what you've been up to recently?
Sure. I was a campus tour guide a long time ago, so we won't count that one on the resume. But since then, started my career at a private institution and did all of the kind of stair steps there and left as the director of enrollment marketing. So the thing I really like about this topic is I have been a client of many agencies. And then within the last probably 8 years, I've shifted to agency work specifically. So I've been at 3 higher ed specific agencies now, focused primarily in digital media. So like you said, director of digital strategy at Liaison now. And my team runs paid and organic media strategies for our clients.
That's amazing. And do you cater specifically for higher ed now as well? Cool.
Yep, 100% higher ed.
That's fantastic. And I know I talked with one of your colleagues before in the past on this show as well, Kurt. So shout out to Kurt. We have another member from your team. That's great. Awesome. Well, it's great that you've had experience working with vendors and agencies in-house at a higher ed institution. Now that you're on the other side, can you tell us a little bit more about how higher ed institutions can get the most out of an agency, specifically like a digital marketing agency? Because I know higher ed institutions really struggle with working with partners sometimes.
Yeah, definitely. And digital media is one of the places where I've found there's a greater need for client education. And maybe it's not the client that we're working with directly, but it's that client representative's ability to communicate digital value to their stakeholders, their president, their board of trustees, or whoever the case may be. So I think it's all that to say particularly important to have a really good agency and get everything you can out of your digital agency, because it is such a niche channel in a lot of institutions' marketing mix where people don't feel as equipped to understand exactly what they're getting and exactly what they're doing. So I think the biggest thing that I see with successful partners who we get really good results with and enjoy working together, which is also important, is that the digital agency needs to be an extension of your in-house team. So everything that I offer in every setting I've been in as an agency representative, I focus really heavily on collaboration and feedback loops. So just making sure that the client feels like they have a voice in what's going on, and that they understand the takeaways, and it's a really comfortable place to ask questions and optimize on things together. And really just the biggest thing in working with a digital agency is making sure that you are getting that client education while you're in partnership with them. It's not just about the deliverables, which are fantastic, but it's, are you learning to be confident in understanding those results and whether they're good or bad? Are you comfortable and confident in presenting those results to the people you're accountable to, which is a big part of what most enrollment folks do. So I would say collaboration is the biggest thing. Find an agency that you feel really comfortable with the back and forth, for sure.
Got it. And I know that's like a double-edged sword, right? Because as a higher ed institution, you can't just come in and hire a digital agency partner and just be like, hey, go do Facebook ads and then
Right.
just, meet once a week. Like it has to be more than that, right? So on the institutional side, there has to be a certain level of commitment that you're also willing to do. Because again, like if I told you to Jess, go do my Facebook ads, like it doesn't work like that, right?
Yeah. And we even see in one of the things I've noticed recently, because tis the season for RFPs right now. One of the things I've
Mm-hmm.
noticed a lot of institutions are shopping for digital agency partners is it's kind of like, let's ask for all of that and the kitchen sink and just see what catches. And I think a red flag for institutions is if you get a proposal of services or something that's like, yes, we can do everything and more, everything applies everywhere, that it's a red flag, because one of the most important things I think an agency can do is meet an institution where they are in the process. So understanding, like, is this your first attempt in a paid media spend to generate leads for your programs, or do you already spend $50,000 a month and you're looking to launch a new program? Those are completely different strategies with completely different partnership needs. So having somebody who's going to be realistic with you, meet you where you are, understand your internal resources for things as simple as, like, I could tell you we'll generate 100 leads a month, but if you have a one person recruiting team and you can't work those leads, you have to have confidence that your partner is going to be able to say 100 leads is a lot for you. Instead of going full bore into 100 a month, let's have a goal of 50 a month for your single recruiter and then help you come up with some comm strategies after. So really looking at you as an institution holistically is what an agency should prioritize in that regard, for sure.
Gotcha. Yeah, that helps a lot. And I'm also thinking like I I work in CPC and paid media space, so I know a lot of the terms um, very very well. I've been using them for a long time, but I could imagine if someone's just trying to outsource digital marketing, like the vernacular can be extremely. It could be a pretty big gap in the fancy words, right? And so like trying to understand like if an agency is legit or not just because they use a bunch of fancy words, like maybe like it's hard to understand, right? It's hard to gauge. It sounds like they know what they're doing, but they may not because they're not translating that information over correctly.
Yeah, I think that's a large part of that is agencies as a whole. It's our fault, because I find that a lot of times to try to differentiate ourselves in market, I mean, the
Mm-hmm.
tendency is to be like, we have something proprietary, we have something brand new, and like try to marketize everything so that it appears like it is just something fresh, new, exciting, when really it's a tactic that you can use in a lot of different ways and it fits in your mix. But for folks who, like you're saying, don't have necessarily the same working understanding, it can be really easy to just get sucked into something that sounds new, creative, and different. And there are definitely lots of emerging trends in this space, but I find that a lot of it can be boiled down into lowest common denominators, right? Like strategies within paid search change, but right now, paid search is paid search is paid search, right? Like there are some principles that are never going to change. You're bidding on keywords,
Mm-hmm.
and making sure that clients have like basic understanding. The example I use all the time is you'll hear folks say paid SEM, PPC, paid search, Google search. And a lot of clients don't even realize that all of those are pretty much the same thing, that there's not a lot of distinguishing between each of those. So that's what I've tried to do in every position, in every agency across the board, is the terms need to be accessible. The definitions need to be accessible. One of my most heard and probably least favorite phrases from our clients is, I know enough to be dangerous. And I'm like, I get what you're saying. That's your way of saying, I'm not super confident in this, but I'm showing up. And I just want to flip that so that you don't know enough to be dangerous. You know enough to be really confident, because the more you know and the more you understand what kind of info to pass back to me to make your campaign successful, like the better we're going to do. So I forgot where this question even started, but that's my answer.
No, this is great. And I agree. One of my pet peeves is I know enough to be dangerous. It's like, do you? Because that means you
Mhm.
know how to do something. And I don't think you do. Like, would you tell someone who's, let's say, on a plane, a flight, the pilots are somehow incapacitated, and you say, hey, like, I know enough to be dangerous. Like, that doesn't make me feel good.
It's
Yeah,
true.
I
And
couldn't agree more.
I know enough to be dangerous, coupled with something like, why, when
Yeah,
I Google this, is it in position 1 and you're saying it's typically in position 3?
correct.
To me, that doesn't say anything other than I, as a partner, need to do a better job of educating, right? Like we need to lay better foundation so that we're all speaking the same language and moving in the same direction.
Yeah. No, and this made me think of another phrase that I heard that I really like is there's a lot of players in the paid media space, right? Just because everyone's paying doesn't mean everyone's winning. There's losers within people who are advertising. And so if you're just doing advertising, it doesn't mean you're winning. There's a small percentage of people winning and the rest are losing. And so you have to be in that winning side of the paid media advertising space.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, showing up is like 50% of the game.
Mm-hmm.
But showing up effectively is really the recipe that you are paying an agency to help you support in, right? So even when we have preliminary conversations with clients and they're like, we want to rank for MBA programs, just in general, anytime, anywhere someone searches MBA program, I need to rank for that. And being able to add context to that and walk them back into understanding like we probably need to start with higher volume, low competition. There's a lot of strategies to get us to that place, but just making the strategy piece more accessible and more realistic, I think keeps everybody moving so that, like you were saying, you're not just participating, but you're participating in a way that is effective for your institution.
Got it. Yeah, this is great. And I know we've kind of already talked about this already in terms of like common mistakes you see higher ed institutions making from the agency perspective. You said strategy is one of them. I think trying to rank for every keyword's one, but are there some other things that really boil up to the top as common denominators?
I think a big one that I see, and this is a collaborative probably issue between institutions and agencies, and they kind of feed off each other in the same vein of saying, you know, you look at an RFP and it lists every possible channel that everyone at that institution could brainstorm and saying, I want to know what you're going to do with this kind of thing. And then as agencies, sometimes we answer that because we feel like that's what we have to do. Like if the client's saying, I want to be on TikTok, then we're like, okay, well, they need to be on TikTok. And I think the biggest common denominator issue in that approach is that it's tactics over strategy. And so just having a healthy perspective where you can say, I see that you have interest in that. And goes for agency or institution, right? Like we acknowledge that we have interest in that. Maybe we have really good content for that space. Let's figure out what problem we're trying to solve first and make sure that the tactics we're deploying make the most sense for that problem. I think that's one of the biggest issues I see rolling up to the top across the board is just because digital changes so quickly, paid media changes so quickly, and there's so many new trends to adopt, we all gravitate towards tactics instead of gravitating towards what's the problem and then mapping out approaches to get there.
Got it. Okay. So like an example for this would be like, let's say I'm a marketing director for a business graduate program. Instead of me coming to you and being like, hey, like I want to run TikTok ads for our business degree, it'd be like, hey, like I'm going to come to you like, hey, I want to use digital to influence more website visits around our graduate program. I don't know what channel is going to work best. Like that's up to you guys. You figure that out.
Sure. Yeah. Or even like, I want a greater presence on emerging platforms. That can even be a goal. If it's like, I want to create awareness around emerging platforms because I understand that certain age demographics are there or certain interest demographics are there, even that being a problem to solve makes more sense than honing in on platform specifics, et cetera, just because that's like where we feel pressure to be. Because then the question could be, okay, what are the age demographics you're after? What kind of conversion are we hoping to generate? Is this strictly awareness? And we're going to say we're fine with an outcome of X impressions in CTR or engagement on the video. Is this lead gen? Because there are certain channels that are better for conversions than others. And then, like, what are your internal resources? If you check all the boxes and we're on the path to TikTok, but the only video content you have available is professional B-roll, it's like, is that going to return the highest on a platform that's made on authentic content and user-generated content? Do you have realistic expectations about placing your commercial on TikTok versus having a full content strategy around what's trending? So it just leads down the path of so many more substantial conversations that solve the problem, and maybe they lead us to the tactic where we want to be, or maybe we test the tactic where we want to be, but we've done a lot of valuable work in between.
That's great. Yeah. And if your strategic planning even involves anything that you can tie like those digital marketing points to, like that's even better proof that like your tactics are actually aligned with strategic initiatives for the institution. And I know as a marketer myself, who's more of an IC role, individual contributor role, like I always like feel like I always get drawn to the tactics, and really I need to focus more on the strategy and how it's driving the top line. So that's great. In terms of working with a bunch of customers right now, right? You have a bunch of higher ed customers. What do you see something that's working in your space at the moment?
Yeah. We've seen a really big uptick in interest, which is fantastic because the data has been telling us for a long time we need to be more interested, but in efforts around organic strategy. We've seen lots of folks coming on board to run some sort of concerted organic strategy when they haven't before. I would say 90% of our clients that are investing in SEO, this is probably their first time doing so in an official capacity, which there's tons of, industry released reports out at the moment that talk about this huge proportion of students that find you for the first time through an organic search, and how organic leads convert so much at a so much higher rate down funnel just because of the intent and the accessibility of your information when they're looking for it. And I think it's just indicative of a shift in consumer behavior that's been happening for a long time. And it's going to keep happening, where it's less about, let me find who I want and send them what they need to know, which still has a place, of course. So all my colleagues, don't send me hate mail after this, but make sure it's a postcard if you would. But it's more like, are you present and is your content relevant when people are looking for something that you offer? And that's across the board, not just in higher ed. It's more of a consumer focused buying experience as opposed to an agency influenced buying experience. Think Mad Men, right? Obviously not the same thing now. So yeah, we have tons of clients who are interested in organic strategy, thankfully, and we're seeing some pretty significant gains on those. So it's a great place to start investing if institutions aren't yet.
Got it. And do you have any like success stories around organic and how that's played? You don't have to name the institution, obviously.
Yeah, it's a good time of year to ask, honestly, because we're doing a lot of year-end reporting. The first one that comes to mind is we did have an institution that we partnered with on kind of like a 6-month trial basis. And basically, this is another piece of kind of agency education, right? A lot of people say SEO. And then if you say, could you tell me what you mean? Like what are the actual deliverables? What are you hoping to gain? There's usually a pretty big learning gap because it feels like a black box to a lot of people, right? Like, I don't know, it means something related to my website, right? So when I'm talking about we're engaging in organic strategy together, it's about like technical site audit. It's about title tags, meta description, best practices, crawlability, and indexing. But then ongoing, it's also about content strategy. So identifying keyword gaps, meeting best practices, and iterating on that over time. And then also building authoritative backlinks. All of those things are part of the recipe. So all of that to say, with this client that we did a 6-month kind of trial run with, we deployed a lot of that. And they saw the highest month of organic traffic in the history of their site collecting data within that 6 months, which is a huge testament to the fact that it's not that we, had this magic bullet. It was that it hadn't been paid attention to before, right? So there were some pretty big gains we could make immediately. A lot of folks
Hmm.
say, yeah, I know SEO is a long game, and it is, right? That doesn't mean it always takes forever to see impacts. It means that you should invest in it in the long term and expect big trend gains over time. But there are a lot of things that can improve in shorter periods of time if it's something that has been neglected for a long time. So,
That's fantastic. Yeah, I mean, your mileage may vary for sure. 6 months is pretty quick.
yeah,
Um,
well, they weren't just 6 months after that. We're doing more now. So,
right. Do you think you said there's a lot of your customers now investing in SEO. Do you think there's been a shift in the market around like, hey, like we want leads now, like now? And like I think that was always the argument between like paid versus organic, right? Like, well, we
yeah.
can't wait 1 year. So like we're gonna pay 10 times more for a lead today. We know it's inefficient, but we can drive leads today and not in a year. Like, is that the argument you see a lot? And also, like, do you think there's a shift in the narrative that is helping higher ed double down a little bit more into SEO?
I personally would like to see the shift happen quicker. I do think that there's a place for paid media and a place for organic, and they work hand in hand. And there's lots of schools of thought and debate about how and what you should focus on and what varying degrees. But yes, I still hear that all the time. Heard it just this week, right? Where it's like, yeah, organic sounds fine. And also, how much is it going to cost us to get the lead volume we need to matriculate this class? And so, one of the exercises I did recently for a client was, okay, let's do some calculations and figure out what that inquiry volume is. But then
Mm-hmm.
also, I want to take a look at your historical yield and your lead sources. And it was just, and this isn't just for one client, this is something that we should be doing across the board as we're deciding where to put our investment from year to year. But the story was you have this exorbitant amount of people who are coming through first source on your website through an organic form submission, and you have whatever the percentages of folks who are coming in on paid media, 15, 25%, whatever. And so it doesn't make sense to base your paid media projections on getting 100% of your leads through paid media, right? You have to take a look and say, what goal do we want to hit for percent of matriculants that come from paid media? But also, what percent of our matriculants are coming from our website? And how do we, number one, maintain that? Because the internet is not a static environment, right? Like, there could be a
Yep.
Google core algorithm update and you could tank tomorrow and not even know, right? So, what do I do to maintain this quality of lead flow that I have that is converting so well for me? And what do I do to improve it? And that's a little bit longer line for folks to draw sometimes, but quantifying it in a way to say, like, well, you're already getting this much. So, what are we willing to sacrifice to maybe lose that or not
Mm-hmm.
on it? So,
Got it. And that plays kind of like into the next question I had, which is around like the decade long question or 2 decade long question of organic versus paid. Like, where do you double down or where do you invest more? What are the questions you should be asking yourself? And one thing I heard from your response just now is like, look at your data. If you're already getting a lot of inquiries or applications through organic, maybe paid isn't the way to go because you know organic's already working. That's essentially what you were saying, right?
I will say not exactly, but that's just because I'm non-committal on that level of finite conclusion.
Yeah,
uh,
no, it's okay.
but I do understand what you're saying, and I would say
Okay.
yeah, like it's a consideration, right? So
Uh-huh.
it's the same thing you do across any marketing medium, where you say, like, where's my low-hanging fruit? What do I do that I know works, and what do I do to maintain the health of that? And then you always want to be testing some level of expansion, right? Like for
Mm-hmm.
an admissions office, that level of expansion is, where are our growth markets this year? We want to expand in this metro and get more students from there. Same thing is true for a channel strategy. Like, you don't want to remain static. You want to say, okay, here's my growth plan for this year, my test plan for this year. Here are these areas that deliver for me every year. What can I do to make sure we're pacing at the same level we have been historically or doing better? So I think if somebody asked me, how do you decide one or the other, I would say you try to figure out how to do both. um, but I know that's not always realistic. I think it falls into several categories, right? So you have like environmental considerations, kind of what we talked about earlier, like what are your internal resources to work leads?
Hmm.
What is your internal capacity to nurture, or do you also have an agency presence that helps you qualify leads? Because, for example, if you looked in a vacuum and you said, hey, school, on average in paid social on Instagram, the leads are $50 or $60. And they could back that on and be like, wow, well, based on our conversion rates, we only need to get that much. But then you're talking about this incredibly high volume of low intent passive leads, which have a place in your mix. But do you have the internal capacity for your counselors to call hundreds of people a day? If you don't, wrong choice for that environment. So there's environmental characteristics to consider when you're deciding where to put your investment. Um, for institutions like that, I may say you want the highest intent, right? You want leads that you're going to have to do the least amount to convert, because when they get to you, they're already further in the buying process. And
Hmm.
so kind of map out this hierarchy for folks, like obviously programmatic, you don't see a ton of conversions, direct attribution conversions, more of awareness. Paid social, you're going to have more passive conversions. Paid search, you're going to have higher intent paid conversions. And then organic is kind of like your mecca of quality, typically down funnel, but also the longest and often least measured way to get leads. So it really just all depends on your situation, which is what a good agency will do for you, is help you create these scenarios and figure out where you want to double down, where you want to test.
Gotcha. So if I wanted to work with the agency, I don't want the straightforward answer. You should do organic because it means they haven't
Listen,
qual.
if you get an
Yeah.
agency that gives you your media plan before they know who you are, they're lying. They're lying to you.
Okay.
There are some things that remain. I'm just kidding to all my fellow agency people. I don't think you're a liar. But I will say there are certain things that could remain constant among certain institution types. Like there are efficiencies for sure. Not everybody is a unique instance
Hmm.
necessarily, but your channel strategy is going to be dependent on your data, right? So if you're partnering with someone and they're able to give you immediate enrollment projections and immediate channel strategy without having reviewed any of your data or had these types of conversations, it's not going to be as accurate as if they did.
Got it. Oh, this is great. And I know I'm talking to an expert when you don't ever say so black and white. This is it, So this is great. It shows your expertise. I want to dig a little bit deeper on what you mentioned around lead follow up, having capacity as well as just like quality of lead. Like, can you walk us through like, imagine I'm not a PPC marketer, right? And I don't know the channels very well. Like, why is it that programmatic doesn't convert? You mentioned, right, it's bad lead quality versus like organic is higher lead quality. Like, can we just go through those each and explain each one just in detail a little bit?
Yeah, and I think plenty of folks can obviously make like exceptions and buts and what ifs to these. So I would say
Right.
these are just a general rule of thumb. But when we're talking about like display advertising or some like streaming advertising or native components like those, all have a hierarchy within themselves of what you typically see as average click throughs, but they're not going to be your lead volume generators, right? Like they exist to be awareness drivers and reinforcers. So your higher performing display campaign is not going to be just your bidding on characteristics. It's going to be your retargeting off of your application page, right? So these are coupling tools typically in a media strategy. And then paid social, the thing that I always say to clients and to internal folks when we're talking about this, when they're like, but why is it lower lead quality? And I don't even really like to use lower lead quality. It's just they're at a different point in the buying process. And the example I always say is because your institution is sandwiched between a cat video and a baby announcement, right? When you're scrolling through Instagram, you're not actively shopping for your next degree. However, what you're trying to do is be present and capitalize on a micro moment, right? Which is why those passive leads require greater nurturing and require a specific type of com flow. And no matter what you do, are not going to convert as high as a paid search lead, which is quite literally Googling business degree programs in my city, right? So
Hmm.
that's kind of the difference in walking folks through user experience to figure out kind of this hierarchy when you're talking about it in terms of lead gen, but also just that age old, like, you don't use a hammer to brush your teeth kind of thing. And that's why strategy and the problem you're trying to solve is so much more important in the onset than tactics.
Amazing. That's great. Thanks for all the definitions there. I'm wondering, just out of curiosity, in organic search space, right? Are you seeing effects of AI, like, or generative AI searching in organic search results right now? And what do you think? How do you think that's going to affect higher ed searching in terms of like applications and enrollment?
I will tell you the biggest thing I have seen recently was related to, I think it was March, the algorithm update that came out related to basically like penalizing content that was perceived to have been heavily generated by AI. So you may be asking about those like Gemini generative AI search results. I have not seen a huge impact there yet. And I feel like we're all still trying to kind of figure out where we
Hmm.
land in our ability to capitalize on that piece of real estate. But when it comes to institutions who are like, hey, listen, we understand we need more content. We need to target these particular keywords. And the first thought is like, well, can you just chat GPT it? Like, do we need a partner to help us develop this? And that's the biggest place I've seen it so far, is sites being penalized for this perceived like AI content or bulk uploads of content, that kind of thing.
Got it. All right. Well, thank you so much. This has been super insightful. I'm wondering where our listeners can connect with you and Liaison as well.
Yeah, sure. Um, it's liaisonedu.com, and you're welcome to reach out to me on LinkedIn or find me online. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. This has been awesome. I love talking about paid media and diving into the details because that's what I do. But it's been great having you, and thanks so much for joining.
Yeah, this was fun. Thanks.